Hi guys, it's been a while since we talked books on this channel. It's something I'd like to do more of, but I always seem to be a bit swept away in 101 different things. So today I'm going to cover 2 book tags and 1 apology. I'll get onto that in a minute. First, I just need to say I may or may not get through this recording in one go. The sky has gone very, very dark and it looks like there's a massive storm rolling in. And as you know, if you watch this channel, the roof is made out of tin. So the moment that it starts raining, we've got to shut things down and pack things up for another day. My neighbours as well, I live next door to a workshop, and for the past couple of weeks now, they have been sawing metal pretty much non-stop. I'm fairly confident that this microphone that I've got is quite a good microphone, so hopefully it won't interrupt us, or at least you shouldn't be able to hear it too much. This is what my day-to-day life is like at the moment. But hopefully that won't interrupt us. But if I zone out for a moment, or I lose my train of thought, or you see a lot more edits than usual, it's probably because my brain is currently melting out of my face. But with all of that said, let's get into it. So I'm going to kick off with a quick apology to my friend Margaret, who tagged me in a couple of weeks ago on a book tag. The theme, I think, was New Year book tag, or the year ahead. And it was talking about sort of, you know, reading goals for the year ahead, books that you were looking forward to reading. And I'm really, really sorry, but I thought I might just skip over that one, because I sort of looked at the calendar and I saw that it was almost April. I felt like I was a little bit over the New Year vibe. I just wasn't quite feeling it. But I just want to say thank you for thinking of me, and please do keep tagging me in, and when I can I will do them. So the 2 book tags that I am going to cover, the first one is called the Two-Bie book tag, and I was tagged in by Heather Reeds, and it's in celebration of her channel turning 2 years old. So I'll leave the link below, go and check her out. I really love her content. I feel that it's very thought-provoking, and she often brings up interesting moral dilemmas or little bits and pieces that maybe I hadn't noticed in something. And I just really enjoy her content. So go check her out, show her some love. And the second one I wasn't tagged in on, but I think Heather did it, and I've seen Andy do it, and I'll talk about him later on. But it was called the Snobby, let me just check. Yeah, the Snobby book tag, and it's about what makes a snobby reader, or what is snobism. Is that a word? Snobism? Snobism. Elitism in book reading. And I thought it was just a really interesting set of questions, so I thought I'd jump in on that. So, starting off with the Two-Bie book tag. So because Heather's channel was turning 2 years old, she was looking back at some of the older posts that she'd made, including her Booktube introduction video. Now, I never made a Booktube introduction video, but I have got a little introduction video on my channel that tells you a little bit about what the channel's about and what to expect. So I'm going to use that as my reference. And the first question was, name 3 things you said on your newbie video that is still true about your channel now. Now that's quite easy, because my channel introduction video is about 30 seconds long, so I didn't get a lot in there. So the channel is still called Writer in Rwanda. That hasn't changed. I still am living in Rwanda, haven't been deported yet, and I still tune pianos. In fact, that is my other business and my other channel, Kigali Keys, where I go around sticking screwdrivers into pianos and making them work. So those 3 things are still correct. Name 3 things you said on your newbie video that are not true about your channel now. There aren't enough to give 3, but I can give 2. The first one is I begin by saying I'm a development consultant. Yeah, technically I still am. I still have that company, but as the years go by, I identify less and less as a development consultant and slightly more as a piano tuner. I feel like I did my part, and now I like pianos and motorbikes. And so that's kind of what I'm focusing my time on, and communications more than anything else. I kind of spoke about this a little bit in the Worlds Collide podcast, where I just said, I feel the older that I get, the more it's time to pass on that baton of idealism to the next generation. Yeah, that's less true than it was when I made that video. And the other one is, I also said that I occasionally write novels. And I don't know if I can still say that, because it's been probably about a good couple of years since I wrote my last novel, and I would say that my writing impetus, my writing drive fell off a cliff somewhere along the way. I've talked about this in other videos. Essentially what happened is I wrote a book I didn't intend to write. It took me 2 years, and I've not recovered from it. I've not recovered from what I wrote. It's a complicated story. It's a complicated relationship for which I probably need to go into therapy. But at the moment, I would say that I'm definitely not writing as much as I used to. Hopefully that will change in the future, we'll see. But I am currently working on editing audiobooks, so that's quite good fun, and we'll see where that goes. Name 3 booktubers who influence your content or your reading. Now, obviously, I have to give Heather a shout out because it's her book tag that I'm doing. So if she hadn't launched that book tag, I wouldn't be here now. Well, existentially, that's a strange thing to say. I would physically still be here now, but I would not be doing, you know what I mean. But I also think that she doesn't really count because she invented these questions, so I feel like it's only fair to name 3 others. So the first one is a big shout out to my friend Margaret Pinard, who's probably my longest running Booktube friend. Yes, she's definitely my longest running Booktube friend, and she influenced me because watching her stuff kind of made me think maybe I should start a YouTube channel as well, and actually upload to it now and again. So Margaret's fantastic. She's an author. She's got so many books. I'll leave a link below. And she also is a prolific content creator. She is braver than I am. She does the live streaming. I haven't managed that one yet. But she's just really, really helpful. She's been great at answering questions and, helping me out along the way with some of my writing. But also it's interesting because I know that we've definitely known each other since 2016, because before I started vlogging, I had a book blog in which I did talk a lot more about literature and books. And I interviewed her in 2016. So I think we might have become friends around about 2015, and it might have had something to do with her reviewing Those Rosy Hours at Mazendarum, which was one of my books. I'm not entirely sure. So Margaret, if you could drop a comment below and just remind me how we met, that would be amazing. That would be great. Number 2. Somebody who I just think is absolutely fabulous is a lady called Emma Newman. Now, many of you might know this name. She's a Hugo Award-winning podcaster, incredible author. But when I kind of first got introduced to her, I didn't know what a big deal she was. So again, it was back to Rosy Hours about 2015. My publisher at the time was creating an audiobook of one of my books. And Emma is also, as well as being a podcaster, a prolific author, she's also an audiobook narrator. And so she actually came on board to narrate the book, and that's how we got introduced. And then through that I suddenly realized, oh my goodness, she's written a lot of books. And I got into her Split Worlds, I was going to say Split Worlds trilogy, but I think it's 4 books at least, which is a fabulous series all about an alternate universe kind of underneath the city of Bath in England, full of fae folk and magical beings. It's very cool. And she's also done a lot of sci-fi like Planetfall and After Atlas. Again, I shall leave those links below. But the other thing that she is universally beloved for is a podcast series called Tea and Jeopardy. Now, if you've been, in the book world for a while, you're going to know Tea and Jeopardy. It was just an incredible podcast where She went off to this magical tea lair in each episode, and she talked to agents and authors and people in the industry. And at the end of each episode, her guest would have to escape the tea lair through some form of mild peril. And it was delightful. It was a brilliant, brilliant series. And she's currently now re-releasing it on her YouTube channel. So I will leave that link below. If you didn't catch Tea in Jeopardy the first time around, or if you did and you just loved it, you'd like to hear it again, go and have a listen. She does mention that the audio quality is a little bit dodgy because these were recorded quite a while ago, you know, and age doesn't always treat digital media kindly, but do go and have a listen. They're just still delightful. She also does some very cozy videos about ducks. So go and watch those. Now, the third one that I'm going to bring up is a guy called Andy who has a channel called Really Random Reads. And I don't generally go out looking for Booktube and AuthorTube channels. I don't have a massive amount of time at the moment, which sounds awful. But I tend to find people through other people that I already watch and the kind of things that they like and recommend. And Heather, again, very influential, Heather recommended going to watch Andy's channel. And yeah, I think he's brilliant. He's just starting out, but he really thinks about what he's reading, and he has such a diverse selection of books, as it would suggest with a channel title like Really Random Reads. It's pretty random, but I like that because I'm a very eclectic reader myself, so I like that. And I'm mentioning him firstly because he's the newest booktuber that I've encountered, but in that very, very short time, I think I've already put 2 of his books on my reading list. One of them is a book called The Vet's Daughter, I think it was. It sounded delightfully dark and gothic-y goodness. So I don't know, haven't read it yet, but I hope to get there. So yeah, really love what Andy's doing. Again, I'll leave all of these links below. Go and check them out. Okay, I had to put my hair up and turn the lighting up. That storm is making me a little bit hot and bothered. Definitely a little bit humid. Nothing at all to do with the... nothing at all. Right. How would you describe your channel growth? Are you good with it? Surprising is how I would describe it. Yeah, I'm really good with it. I started a YouTube channel like years and years ago. I want to say 2011, but it's probably more around 2013-ish. And then through a series of unfortunate events, unfortunate and quite common events I've since found out, I lost all access to it. And when that happens, YouTube is supremely unhelpful at getting you access again. They don't, and you can never do that. So I did a different video. If you're interested about the ins and outs of it, I did a different video. But I was pretty gutted by that. And then I started another channel. And for many years, it was just like friends and family stuff. There was nothing really substantial going on there. And then I just started adding a few more videos. And again, through watching some of Margaret's stuff, I was like, maybe I should be a bit more proactive. And I was really surprised at how it's gone. It hasn't gone bang, but it's been growing at a rate that I've been comfortable with. There was one point at which I released a couple of videos and the subscriber count went up suddenly. And I actually felt a bit panicked by that. I was like watching it going up going, oh gosh, you know, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. No. Because obviously the more subscribers you have, the more you're sort of checking yourself and self-censoring and wondering if you're posting the right things. And I still feel like I'm in my experimental phase. So I'll post a few videos, mostly about motorbike rides around Kigali, and people love those. They love those. But then I'll post something that's more of a personal interest project. Like I started posting about Rwandan Sign Language, and going back over an old diary I kept for 2 years when I first came to Rwanda about 20 years ago. And whenever I post things like that or book related stuff, my viewership suddenly goes boop. So it's a bit of a balancing act at the moment between posting things that I know people will enjoy and that I enjoy as well. I really am enjoying motorbikes at the moment. But then also kind of, still being myself and still posting other things I'm interested in. And I think it's good to get that out of the way at the beginning, because I don't want my channel algorithm to just be motorbikes, because then I won't enjoy it anymore. So if I mess with the algorithm now and it realizes I do a few different things, then maybe I'll attract a broader range of people. I don't know. That's my plan. But yeah, I'm really surprised. I definitely didn't think it would get above the hundreds. So I'm very happy with that at the moment. And thank you to everybody who has been watching. Can you describe your ideal viewer, the person most likely to watch your material consistently and subscribe? No, no, I can't. Like I say, I post about all sorts. I post about book tags, I post about sign language, I post about motorbikes, I post a lot about pianos, and of course, Rwanda. I do know that the vast majority of my viewers are in Rwanda. I think mostly Rwandan, and a mixture of Rwandan and expats. A lot of people tune in because I do some things about, if you're traveling to Rwanda, you need to know this. So a lot of people are seeking travel advice. I don't know really, and I don't really care. I mean, tune in for a video, stay and watch 20 of them. I like the idea that it's an eclectic audience of people coming, taking what they want, taking what they need, and stay, don't, but enjoy. If you're enjoying it, then stay. And yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about it. But at the same point, ideally, it would be nice not to have snarky viewers. I do occasionally get some snarky comments, and more grounded and more experienced YouTubers will just ignore those. But because I have such a small audience at the moment, I do tend to read every comment, and I can be a bit snarky too. So when somebody gives me a bit of BS, I do tend to kind of engage, unfortunately, so I do need to stop doing that. And ideally, I could do without creepy people DMing me inappropriate stuff. I think all content creators, male and female, get this at some point along the line. And thankfully, it doesn't happen very often, but I literally have a folder on my computer titled Creepy Guys, and because it is always guys, and I just collect those up because I can't help thinking that one day it's going to make for very funny content later down the line. So I could do without it, but at the same point I can see the value in it. Name 3 Booktube creators you think the people who like your channel will also like. It's a difficult one. My channel, when I started out, it was supposed to be all books, all literature, all of the time. The first video I posted, I think I've taken it down now, but I just finished a stint as head of English for the University of Global Health Equity. I ran academic writing, I ran creative writing, and my first video that I uploaded was a creative writing related video, and that's entirely where I intended to go. And my friend said, you should probably call the channel Writer in Rwanda. So I did, because I intended to talk about writing. And then life overtook me, motorbikes happened, pianos happened, Rwanda, a lot of people have a lot of questions, so I just started answering those, and I just got further and further and further away from the writing and literature side of it. So people who enjoy my channel might not be big booktubers, but I've mentioned the 3 booktubers, 4 booktubers I definitely think you should check out above. So if you are into literature and books, go and check those out. People who like my content otherwise, go and check out my year wipe video. So at the end of the year, I talk about books and movies and YouTubers that I've enjoyed during the year, and I give some recommendations for things to go and check out. See that video, and that will give you some inspiration. Name and thank any subscribers who have been faithfully watching stuff and commenting. Well, I think my top commenter is probably Margaret. We kind of egg each other on, she watches my stuff and comments, I watch her stuff and comments, so that's been really lovely. Also, my mum and dad, I know that they watch most of the videos. My mum was saying the other day, because we're a very long way away from each other, and she was saying it was really nice to watch your videos. It felt like you were in the room, you know. So it's how I keep up to date with my family. My mum doesn't really comment on anything because I'm not sure she's got a YouTube account, but my dad does, and he leaves a lot of comments and likes, so that's really nice. And also, I'll just give a shout out to some of the followers in the past who've just given some lovely comments, and it makes me want to carry on doing that. So here they are. Okay, right. So next one. Are there any changes you're thinking of making to your channel in the near future? I'd love to do more about literature and books. I really, really would, in between everything else going on. As time passes, I hope to introduce more. And also, I want to do more collaborations, especially with small businesses in Rwanda, because I have noticed that every now and again, just occasionally, I'll release something like looking at bars in Kigali, or, you know, going out somewhere, and I'll just recommend it. And then I'll discover that people actually go to those places because they saw them and, you know, they like to check them out. So I'd like to do more promotion of people and businesses that I really believe in. So there's a group here, for example, called Talking Through Art, and they employ disabled people, mostly women, to make beautiful handcrafts, traditional Rwandan crafts, and then, you know, sell them around the world. I'd love to help to promote that and help to sell some of their products through my own channel. So we're talking about it at the moment, but it's finding something that's a good balance for everybody involved. But I do think with YouTube that there's real potential to use the platform to promote really good and interesting projects. So I'd like to do more of that. Okay, so that was the Two-Bie book tag, and I really enjoyed doing that. Thanks for tagging me in, Heather, and congratulations on your channel turning 2. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, you know, what you put out over the next year, because I really do enjoy I love your videos. And yeah, I think for me, it's a pleasure finding people like Heather and Margaret and Andy. In Rwanda, there isn't really a book culture. There are very, very few bookshops. There isn't really sort of a reading culture, a book culture, a literary culture in the same way. And so, you know, it's very, very rare that I actually sit down and have in-depth conversations about books. And so really, I'm getting that fix through these channels. And it's just really nice to hear thoughtful, long-form, in-depth discussions about books and literature. Makes me feel like I'm getting smarter. Right, so this second book tag is called Snobby book tag, and it's one that Andy covered, one that Heather covered. They didn't tag me in, but I wanted to do it anyway because I thought it was really interesting. Let's just get straight into it. So what is your definition of book snobbery? My definition of book snobbery is looking down on somebody for the books or the literature that they choose to read, the things that bring them joy. It's yucking somebody's yum. Is there a genre or type of book you would never consider reading? Nope. I have intense curiosity, and I think that the wonder of books is that there's so many different genres, so many different things to read. There are definitely genres I don't particularly enjoy and wouldn't really reach for. Second World War period really isn't my kind of thing. I don't know, it doesn't do much for me. You know, and I'm not a huge romance reader, but I have read a few romance, and there are some that I have enjoyed. There's nothing I would categorically say I would never read, because how do you know if you like it or not unless you start reading it? No. Does erotica count as literature? Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely. And I'll tell you how I know about this, because years ago my publisher brought out a collection called The Red Phone Box, and it was a collection of short stories, and all of the stories were interlinked. So it's like, I think they call it a story circle or something, a story chain, where you get lots of different authors and they each write part of the story, which is sort of interconnected, and you get lots of different styles all telling a similar theme. And there was a story in that, I've forgotten the title of it, but I remember very, very clearly a scene in there. And I've got to say, not a huge amount happened in this chapter, but there was a lady sitting in a cafe, smoking a cigarette. And it was just that. And it was just the way it was written. And I looked at it and I went, something about that writing just went, oof, it went through me. I was like a little bit goosebumpy. Was fascination too strong a word? But I was fascinated. And I contacted my publisher and said, who wrote this? And they came back and they said, well, it's a lady called Remittance Girl is the name that she writes under. And they put me in touch with her. And we actually ended up in London having high tea at one point. She was visiting London and we met up and we had afternoon tea in this fancy hotel with cakes and tea. It was a lovely afternoon. Back in 2023, I went on a little walkabout down through Europe and North Africa and I ended up in Malaga hanging out with her again. She was, I don't know if she still is, but she was a professor of erotic fiction. And she's written a lot of it. And she really did open my eyes to the genre because, as she pointed out, anybody can write a sex scene. It doesn't take a lot of talent to do it, but it takes a lot of talent to do it well. You know what I mean? To really play on the potential of something, the possibility of something, bring somebody up to a point and to really arouse somebody takes skill. And there's been things of hers that I've read that I found slightly uncomfortable, but also quite arousing. And I thought, wow, to be able to take somebody to a state where they're thinking in their brain, not sure about this, but they're thinking in their body, I'm sure about this. That's a skill. That's a talent. That is a way with words that gets into somebody's head and kind of just picks it apart. And that is sheer talent. So absolutely good erotica is literature. Absolutely. No question. I'll leave a link to her below as well if you want to go check her out. Is it better to read classical books than popular bestsellers? No. No, whatever gets you reading is a good thing. I'd probably say, I might be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, frequently am, but I'd probably say that popular bestsellers are the drug that gets you into classical literature. I think often if you get into books and you're reading, like with my dad, we'd just go around, bookshops, and I spent hours in bookshops just picking out books I liked and reading them and trying them. And I think when you develop that love of literature, because you've enjoyed what you've been reading, then you start to look at the sort of history of it, the anthropology of it, of who wrote this genre first? Where do these concepts come from? And you hear other authors referencing other authors back through time. And you're like, oh, well, I like this author, so I'm going to go back and see what that was about. And I think popular modern classics, if it ignites the passion of reading, then later on you go, right, now I'm going to learn a bit about the history of literature and who the OGs were, the OG writers were. I might be wrong, but I'm not sure it works the other way as often. Often in school, we all learn certain classics, and the books are brilliant. Don't get me wrong, the books are great. Maya Angelou, what was the other one we did in school? Of Mice and Men. There are loads of books like that, To Kill a Mockingbird. They're not really old classics, but they're getting that way. And I did enjoy them, but I enjoyed them because I already love literature and I'd been reading a lot of books. Whereas I think if you throw me into literature with those books, or even something older than that sort of, I don't know, I think Andy recently covered Moby Dick. I think that would have killed my love of reading stone dead. I don't think I would very much then have wanted to go on and read lots of other new modern books because I don't think I would have enjoyed the book I got. So in that respect, no, classics aren't always better. I think modern books are fantastic because they are the route into the past. It's kind of an interlinking chain down through history. So yeah, whatever. Read whatever the fuck you like and enjoy it. Just make sure you enjoy it. That's the important thing. And one bad book isn't a reason to stop. One bad book, put it down, move on. And that includes mine. It's a Monday afternoon. I'm gonna have a cheeky small large beer. Have you ever bragged about reading a classic in order to sound smarter? No, I don't have to. I have an accent like this. If I want to sound smarter, I just turn that on. I have posed. I have been a poser. Back in college, I used to sit on the steps reading Shelley, but I did enjoy those, and I was actually reading them. So I don't know, but maybe I thought it made me look a little bit smarter. So there was that. I do have one story, but I don't know if it's appropriate to tell. It wasn't a classic, although nowadays maybe it is considered a classic. It's been enough time. But when I was penultimate year of primary school, so I was probably about 10, I discovered Terry Pratchett. And I discovered Terry Pratchett because of the cover art. So it was an artist called Josh Kirby, and he did a lot of the cover art for Terry Pratchett, very recognisable. And the book that I took into school was called Light Fantastic. It's one of the earliest, the second Discworld novel, she said, pulling that out of midair and definitely looking at Wikipedia while she does it. And if you've seen the cover for that, you'll know it's typical Josh Kirby art. There's a woman on there with very big boobs. And I was just being a bit provocative. I thought I'd take it into school with me, you know, partly because of the artwork and partly because I wanted to prove that I could read it, because my spelling in school was appalling. It was appalling until my late 20s. I couldn't spell for toffee, but my ability to read was actually quite high. And I just wanted to prove that I could read at an adult level to my teacher, who I quite liked at the time and wanted to impress. And I sat there and, you know, I had my good 10 minutes of reading out loud to the teacher. And then I went back to my desk. And I realised, even at that young, tender age, that although I could read the book, I could, you know, put one word in front of the other, I didn't understand it. I had no idea what was going on in that book. None whatsoever. Which was funny, because at that time I'd read a little bit of Stephen King. Not a whole book, but I'd read a little bit of It, or the beginning of It, whilst I was, you know, at a friend's house. And I understood Stephen King, because there was nothing really subtextual about that. It was very much, this is what happens and this is what's happening and this is what's happening. And I understood it. But with Terry Pratchett, it was a level of humour that at 10 years old, I didn't understand at all. So that was kind of interesting for me, because it made me want to understand it. It made me want to get it. And I remember that as well, like growing up, both of my parents were quite political, so I was always growing up watching things like Have I Got News for You and Spitting Image. And when they laughed, I didn't always get the joke, but I wanted to. And that kind of got me into the political part of it, because I wanted to learn about the politics so that I understood the jokes. Yeah, so it gave me something to aspire to. Whether or not it impressed my teacher, I have no idea. I think she was probably very confused. Do audiobooks count as reading? Absolutely. Obviously, they are not the same thing as physically reading a book. You are not reading words on a page, ergo you are not reading. But scientific studies have shown that the brain processes stories exactly the same if they're written as if you hear them. And as somebody who grew up and read books for years and years and years, and now ravenously consumes audiobooks, I get the same thing out of it. There is definitely an adjustment phase. I found it very, very difficult to fully concentrate and listen to audiobooks when I first transitioned over to them. But now that I am pretty much 90% audiobook, because time in the day, I would find it quite difficult to sit down and read a novel now in paper format. I've tried it, and it's as uncomfortable reading books now as it was listening to audiobooks in the beginning. So it's definitely an adjustment, but both of those formats are there to spark your imagination, and both of them do it. You know, when I'm listening to audiobooks, I'm seeing the scene in my head. When I'm reading a book, I'm seeing the scene in my head. Both of those instill the same reaction in my imagination. And so fine, audiobooks are not written, therefore you are not reading. But I don't think that's the point. I don't think whether or not you're listening or you're reading has anything to do with what happens in your mind. And the rain is coming down. We may have to postpone this for a minute. But yeah, I think you get what I'm saying. You know, I don't think it matters how you consume your stories. We were listening to stories for millennia before we were writing them down. So whatever gets you off, you know?
Many minutes later.
Right, I'm back. Do audiobooks count as reading? Who cares? The next one is, do comic books or graphic novels count as reading? Absolutely. Absolutely they do. They have been proven time and time again to increase literacy rates, especially in groups of people, especially I'm going to say young men, who otherwise wouldn't pick up a book. But also they're a very diverse form of literature. You have many different genres within that, from manga through to, I'm going to say Captain America. And in themselves, like good literature, they spawn further creativity. So I know that Marvel has basically fallen out the sky and recently, but, you know, good literature spawns other forms of media, forms of art, forms of music, forms of film, forms of whatever. One of my personal favourites, my aunt gave me a book called Red Rosa, a graphic novel called Red Rosa by Kate Evans. And I love that graphic novel. It's fantastic. I would never have gone and picked up a tome of work on the life and times of Rosa Luxemburg, but I read that graphic novel in an afternoon and I felt like I'd learned a lot and was much more interested in her life and her political views. And now I probably would go and pick up a biography on Rosa Luxemburg. So, you know, it was my gateway into something. It made it easy for me to read and comprehend something that I otherwise probably wouldn't have been that interested in. So absolutely it's literature. Absolutely. Have you ever looked down at someone for reading a popular fluff book? I might have done. There's one example that comes to mind. I was in the UK visiting Dad and Marilyn, and we were off on a country walk. We'd been walking around this lake, and we came to a little food cafe van. And I went up to buy some tea and sandwiches. And as I approached, the lady behind the van was basically reading a book, and she put it down, cover up, on the counter, and I glanced down and it was 50 Shades of Grey. And this is back in the days when 50 Shades of Grey was, you know, it was just becoming a big thing. I think maybe the first movie had come out and I'd heard about it. I had not, nor have I yet read it. And I looked at it and I did possibly made a snap judgment. Yeah, I got a bit judgy. I didn't say anything. And, you know, I more smiled to myself than kind of thought badly of her. I was just like, okay. But for several years now, I have had this thought in my head, like, is that one that in my mind I've just written off and I should go and find out why it's so popular? Because, I mean, it was a big hit, you know? I can sit there being as judgy as I like, but it's still sold millions of copies. So maybe I should go and read it and figure out why. But there is a little part of me that just says, so I don't know. Yeah, I was snobby. Yeah. I didn't say anything to her, obviously, but in my mind, I did think it. I did. Have you ever been the recipient of somebody else's snobbery? No, not that I recall. Never to an extent that it's left a lasting impression, because I can't recall it. But also I have a slight advantage because I'm Midlands British. So whenever anybody tries to intimidate me on an intellectual level, I put on the accent. I could be dumb as mud, but if I put on the accent, people just assume I'm smart. So It's like a get out of jail free card. So I don't know. No, not that I recall. Not that I recall. Would you ever be friends with a snob? That's a tricky one. That's a tricky one. It depends what the type of snobbery is and how it's expressed. So just to give some background, you know, I was a drama school brat, and I spent a lot of my life around lovies, sweetie darling, you know, and sometimes we could get quite snobbish, about the plays that we went to see and the films that we went to see and the books that we read. But that snobbery was usually contained to the dinner table or the pub, in amongst a close-knit group of friends who were kind of on the same page about what you were evaluating. And I think it's perfectly fine to have opinions and ideas about things. I was going to say, I stopped there for a minute because I wasn't too sure if there's a difference between snobbery and discernment, because discernment is the ability to tell if something is good or not in your opinion, you know, or within a cultural opinion. To have discernment is a good thing. But to anybody who doesn't agree with your discernment over something, that can appear as snobbery. And so I think it's important that if you are going to be discerning about certain things, if you're going to be critical about certain things, that it happens within a friendship group who all kind of gets the game. Where it becomes a problem is when the snobbery or your opinion, instead of being used to uplift and as something merry and entertaining, becomes something used to punch down. You know, where your opinion is above other people's and, you know, you're deliberately snubbing other people because clearly they just don't understand. That isn't nice. That is a type of snobbery that I wouldn't enjoy, and a type of person that I wouldn't enjoy. I probably find it more with things like fashion, because I'm not a fashionable person. I mean, you watch my videos, I wear the same thing every bloody time. You know, I really don't care about what I wear or, you know, what I eat. I appreciate fine dining, but I am not a cook. You know what I mean? I'm quite happy just to throw some noodles in a pan. So in that respect, I fully appreciate people who are more discerning about their fashion and more discerning about their food. And I find it entertaining to listen to them talk about it, but I would find it insulting if they had a go at me. You know, I mean, I probably couldn't defend myself because, yes, I do dress and eat questionably. But, so yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes snobbery can be kind of entertaining. And especially when you come from a theatre background, everybody's a snob in theatre. You know what I mean? But in an entertaining way. So I don't know. Yes, I probably would be friends with snobs. I can't think of any at the moment. When I go through my friend group, I can't pinpoint anybody who's snobbish. Most of them are quite curious individuals in as much they have very open minds and they want to know about other people and other things. And, you know, there's a lot of curiosity. So I think curiosity is the death of snobbishism. Snobbish. How do you say that word? Because you cannot be elitist and curious about the world at the same time. It's not easy to do. I'm sure some people can, but it's not easy to do. Because elitism and snobbishism kind of, it's an insular thing that makes a little wall around you and says, I know everything and my opinion is already set and correct. Whereas curiosity is, I don't know anything and the world is fascinating and let me learn. So they're kind of opposing channels. So I think maybe fake snobbishism, people who are actually quite curious but also put on a pretense sometimes, can be quite entertaining and it can be funny, providing it isn't unpleasant. I don't know. Are people who don't read less sophisticated than people who do? Okay. In order to answer that one, I feel like we need to obtain the definition of sophisticated. What is the actual definition of sophisticated? Google. Define sophistication. The quality of being sophisticated. Thank you, Google. Oxford English Dictionary. Right, Oxford English Dictionary. Sophistication. Yes, I have spelt it wrong. Of a person free of naivety, experienced. So are people who don't read more naive and less experienced? Well, no, because you can read a lot and still not have experience. You know, I can read an IKEA instruction manual all day, but that doesn't mean I can build the bloody bookshelf. You know what I mean? You know, and people can be book smart. You've heard the term book smart. People can be very book smart and know a lot of things from having read them, but it doesn't mean that, you know, they are worldly smart and can actually function well in the outside world. So I'm not sure it's about reading. However, I do accept that there's a very, very long cultural stigma about illiteracy, and often people who are illiterate or do not read or write so well are considered to be less intelligent. And that's something that we've had since the dawn of academia, you know, where smartness and intelligence was entirely wrapped up in how far you got in education or formal education. I might have done a TED talk about that. I have to admit that if somebody tells me that they have no interest in books and they don't read, to me that's a little bit of a red flag going up there. But then if they tell me about the years they spent studying anthropology and cheese making in Outer Mongolia, my opinion changes pretty quickly. And, you know, at the same point, somebody who is street smart might meet me and, you know, hear about the books that I've been reading and think, oh my goodness, you know, she's got no idea about the outside world. She's got no ability to function in the real world. So I think sophistication, as with beauty, is probably in the eye of the beholder. You know, what do you consider to be sophisticated? What do you value as experience? And that probably answers that question. I'm going to move on. Measure yourself. Based on your answers to the previous 10 questions, would you qualify as a book snob? I'm sure there are people who would think that I am. I think there are people who would consider me a book snob by sheer virtue of being bookish. You know, I like books. I love books. I have grown up reading books. So I'm sure to some people outside of the literary world, they would look at me and think, oh, she's a snob because she's bookish. But within that world, I don't think that I am a book snob because, you know, I love books. I love all sorts of different types of books. You know, we talked about erotica comics. We talked about audiobooks. I don't care where you get your stories from, so long as you're getting them. You know, and I want to hear about them in whatever format they come. So I think I'm led by other people's enthusiasm. So I don't think that I am a snob in that respect. I don't know. Can we ever truly judge ourselves? I don't know. You might feel differently having watched this video. Let me know below. Go on. Let me know, but let me know kindly. Okay, tag some people in. I don't know enough people to tag in. The people that I have taken these book tags from have probably already done them. So all I'm going to say is I'm going to leave the questions below. And if you have a channel, make a video, join in. And if you don't have a channel, just answer the questions below in the comments, you know, join in. If you found this interesting, if you've got something to say, say it. Loud and proud. I think I have been talking for way too long now and my beer's getting warm. So, well, toodle pip.